Hello, we are
Ethan Tang.
Ryan Nguyen.
Jacob Carbajal.
And Miguel Canella.
Our topic, Unit 731, is introduced in Chapter 36 and page 868 during the contemporary period.
Our resources consist of The Factories of Death by Sheldon H. Harris, Unit 731 by Peter Williams and David Wallace, Unit 731 Immoral Repair, published in the Journal of Medical Ethics, and Human Experimentation at Unit 731 by the nonprofit organization of Pacific Atrocity Education. These resources are credible for numerous reasons. For example, Sheldon H. Harris was a critically acclaimed historian and professor. David Wallace has done extensive research on Unit 731. Our scholarly article is published in the Journal of Medical Ethics, the leading international source for medical ethics. Lastly, Pacific Atrocity Education is a nonprofit organization dedicated to spreading awareness on Unit 731.
Now, to understand the overall context of Unit 731, we must first go back to the 1930s. At this point of history, Japan was conquering China, whose military was much weaker. While biochemical weapons and warfare were previously banned by the Geneva Convention in 1925, Japan never ratified the convention, meaning that Japan was not bound by the terms of this international treaty. Because of this, Surgeon General Shiro Ishii suggested that Imperial Japan should research biological weapons. The Imperial Japanese government was quite fond of this idea and appointed him as the head of the Army Epidemic Prevention Research Laboratory in 1932. To the public, Shiro Ishii's research was to research cures for plagues and illnesses that may be used against the Japanese military forces, but in reality it was quite the opposite. Shiro Ishii established Unit Togo in the Zangma fortress in Manchuria and conducted a number of bodily experiments on Chinese civilians. Thanks to the valuable information Shiro Ishii provided, Unit Togo became an official part of Japanese government, receiving more funding and access to prisoners of war. Due to its importance, Hirohito, Japan's then emperor, relocated and renamed it to the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department, or Unit 731 for short. So what kind of experiments were conducted at Unit 731?
Before we descend into far darker territory, to set the stage, we'll start with what might be considered the more standard of experiments. Chinese subjects at Unit 731 were subjected to weapon testing, including shooting, stabbing, explosives, and more. Although this testing was extraordinarily cruel, their deaths are considered short and merciful by the camp standards, usually dying within a week of entering Unit 731. Beyond these horrific practices, the scope of experimentation expanded to include a wide array of biological tests. Subjects at Unit 731 were intentionally infected with diseases. Japanese experimenters would then either observe the subject's deterioration, do vivisections, or observe the subjects with autopsies. Japanese researchers also found great interest in weaponizing venereal diseases. Guards would force infected male and female prisoners to copulate amongst themselves at gunpoint, to be later observed with the previously mentioned methods. While tests were typically conducted on Chinese civilians, there were other demographics at Unit 731, like Russians, Slavs, Poles, and even unit guards, who would also be vivisected if accidentally infected by anything at Unit 731. Chemical testing was also conducted with gases like sulfur and mustard gas. Prisoners would be decorated in different layers of protective gear, ranging from completely nude to fully decked out in gas masks and equipment, later exposing them to these chemicals in order to test the effectiveness of both the gear and the gases. In addition, there were at least 12 confirmed large-scale field tests of biological weapons targeted at Chinese cities, delivered via plague-infected fleas and other methods. After these experiments, Japanese researchers would check out the aftermath and record the casualties.
While many of Unit 731's experiments were conducted with military objectives in mind, others ventured into territory that defied any justifiable purpose in warfare. Cloaked in the language of scientific inquiry, the lines between research and cruelty became increasingly blurred. For instance, some subjects were placed into low-pressure chambers in order to capture the amount of time it would take for the chest to implode or for their eyes to fly out. Sometimes, people were placed into centrifuges and spun around so they could see how much G-force it would take to kill them. And with the process of sweating subjects to death, prisoners at Unit 731 were mummified and weighed for research. However, their creativity did not stop there. Japanese researchers would also inject some people with the blood of several different animals and even seawater. As harrowing as these experiments were, babies weren't spared from the atrocities at Unit 731. Babies under 1 month old would be tested against the elements like freezing water in order to see how long they could survive. But how did the Japanese have such access to so many babies? I mean, there aren't many babies present in the battlefield taken as prisoners, right? Well, researchers at Unit 731 would have women forcibly impregnated by other prisoners and guards in order to maintain a steady supply of infants. However, some of these women were vivisected at various stages of pregnancy in order to observe the development of human life. In the end, Researchers got away without facing any real consequences. In exchange for information, the US gave many unit personnel immunity. Some researchers even went on to have prosperous careers. Aided by the US, Japan tried sweeping this under the rug, but despite the many attempts to burn every trace of evidence, snippets of what really went down were eventually discovered and released to the public. Yet, the general population still doesn't even know about 731's existence. Many Californians, like ourselves, aren't even aware that if Japan didn't surrender when it did, California's coast would have been attacked and engulfed and plagued by Operation PX. Luckily, it was never carried out because Japan surrendered only a mere month before the planned attack date. In an era where Japan is glorified for their technological advancements and culture, telling the whole story is especially important because the Japanese government is still yet to fully acknowledge or apologize for Unit 731.